Welcome, listeners, to www.ironradio.org, the website and podcast for all things strength sports and sports nutrition. With your hosts, Lonnie Lowry.
Remember, Phil is like a gnarled old oak tree held together with scar tissue and bone spurs.
Rob Fortney.
And I'm telling you, the pain that I would suffer was beyond excruciating.
And Phil Stevens.
Do it, Rob. You'll kill all those nerves.
Thanks for listening. Welcome, Iron Radio listeners. This is Lonnie Lowry. I'm an exercise physiologist, and I'm a nutritionist, and I'm a former competitive bodybuilder.
This is Phil Stevens, strength coach at Strength Guild, powerlifter, Highland Games athlete, and I'm down to 251 pounds from 293.
Wave.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. That's a big drop. This is Dr. Mike T. Nelson, owner of Extreme Human Performance, faculty member at the Carrick Institute, creator of the Flex Diet Cert, and I'm actually at home.
No way.
Ooh, look at you.
I know. Isn't that amazing?
You know what your house looks like? Your house has got to become, it's become the strange place for you to be. Like, I'm visiting.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt.
It is a little weird. We were talking to the neighbors last night because they watch our house and we're gone all the time, and they're like, "Oh, you're actually home." I'm like, "Yeah, we've been home for about a week now." Like, "Oh, wow."
A long time.
Yeah.
So, nice stuff.
Okay, and we've got Dal Gains with us.
Yep.
Dal, maybe just a word or two about yourself?
Yeah, I've been on a few times, so I won't go into details about the backstory, but I guess pertinent today is I'm a firefighter and EMT, have been for going on 9 years, also an acting lieutenant for the fire department, and former competitive powerlifter like Phil until I get healthy again.
Right on.
There you go.
All right, everyone, we have some listener mail. We have a little bit of news from the science world. And, yeah, then we're just going to check in with Dal about, training related to firefighting and that sort of thing. So let's start with some of this mail. This first one, I think, is mostly for Phil. Sorry, it took me a little while to get to this. We're working through a backlog. It says, "Hi, guys. I returned my coffee survey. Thanks for the opportunity. It was fun experimenting. Number 2, my wife just signed me up for a local strongman event. I've never competed in anything in the muscle sports realm. I'm over 40, and there aren't age divisions. I currently weigh in at 222. Weight class for me is between 175 and 231. I plan on eating like an a-hole, quote unquote, until then. I won't know the events until June 11th. The event is June 22nd. So, he's not going to have a lot of time. Yeah. Any recommendations, how to train, how to prepare, how to deload anything, all in caps. Caveat, local CrossFit joint is putting it on, so I'm worried it will be heavy on the hashtag Metcon side as opposed to strongman, but maybe I'm overreacting. Thanks, guys. Anonymous."
Yeah, I mean, it depends if the CrossFit gym is actually putting it on or if it's just hosted there.
Yeah.
Could be a big difference because a lot of times events are hosted at those places just because they have the big open areas. But he could be right. I mean, it might be. My guess is since they're not announcing events, they're probably still deciding, and it could be heavy on that. I can just give some general stuff to work on. I mean, some kind of overhead press it generally will always happen in a strongman competition. So I would work on that. If you have access to it, play with a log, play with an axle. Those are the two weird ones. My guess is with CrossFit, there's going to be some kind of clean and some kind of press overhead. So getting just generally okay with those if you have access to the stuff. If not, just work the hell out of your dumbbell overhead and press. Mm-hmm. So you have some kind of reserve in the tank. Deadlifting, a strong back from strongman. I mean, I still think that's where I got my strong back. Everything is like there's nothing you do that doesn't tear your back up. Mm-hmm. So just tons of back work, from deadlifts to stones to farmers to everything. I mean, you're always picking something up and carrying it around and stuff like that. Loaded carries. Again, anything you can find. I don't know what kind of equipment this guy has. My guess is, I'm just going to guess not a lot. So even heavy dumbbells, heavy barbells, some kind of grip work where you're loaded and carrying for time. even for a yoke, I mean, if you want to put a barbell on your shoulders, I know who is it? Nick Nelson does this all the time. He like goes for a stroll with barbells on his back, something like that. Carrying stuff for time and a little bit of strength endurance. But I mean, for the average strong man, like a minute's a long time. A minute's usually cap, and it's balls out heavy for a minute. That's the difference. It's like super high intensity over 60 seconds.
Yeah.
So stuff like that. I would do a lot of like interval stuff, really short, hard interval stuff. So is where I'd go at. And I mean, other than that, good luck.
Right.
I mean,
right.
You're going to have a better chance knowing when your events get there, but then you only have like 2 weeks to get ready because you need to take some time off before it and, rest up at least 3 or 4 days. So
okay, yeah, that handles the deload. I think that's good advice, Phil. I mean, anything that's going to transfer like that, and heavy carries and overhead pressing and stuff, that all makes sense to me.
Yeah, you're not going to need a bench at all. I mean, there's just no such thing as a bench press in strongman. So you want to really go really heavy on your overhead pressing. So even if it's seated, all that stuff. I mean, Zavicus presses, anything where you're putting weight over your head is generally going to have carryover to strongman. So
okay. Any thoughts, Mike? What about you?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that jumps into my head is with the short time frame is anything you can do to get some tissue exposure to different loading to possibly reduce the risk of injury, especially a soft tissue injury, because you're probably not going to get significantly stronger between now and then. You can obviously get better at the skill component just because you haven't done it before. All the list Phil said, I 100% agree with. The other part that pops into my head, too, is if you've never done a tire before, get someone to show you how to do it, because I just see a lot of possibly torn biceps on tires, and it's because it's lifters' human nature to want to try to curl it almost unconsciously, especially if they slip. They'll stick their arm underneath it, and that eccentric load on the bicep, and pop goes the bicep a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I tell people, I'm like, even if it's frustrating and you may miss the tire, get your hands pretty wide at the bottom, and then just drive into it with your chest and your clavicle as hard as you can. And there's different methods of how to do it at that point. You can use your knee, you can not use your knee. But I personally like having people pull their hands in, so then you're pushing it. So you're trying to keep your hands out of that in-between space, or you're trying to catch it if it drops. And then also with stones, if you've never done any type of round back lifting, start really light. And even if you only get a few exposures to the tissue, that's probably going to be better than none. And then the last thing, too, is when you're competing, like when I did just a novice one, probably 4 years ago now, the big advantage I had is I had done some other competitions before, so I kind of knew about how far to push myself and still probably be safe versus not. Or there was like 3 people that got injured just because they got a little bit too crazy and their form went to just complete crap, and they were injured by like the 3rd event. And the reality is I'm in a novice thing. I'm not competing. I'm not going to win anything. I'm not going to beat anyone. I'm just competing against myself. So just try to keep your state under control, too.
That sounds good. I mean, these events do, I think both of you guys are kind of getting to this, to use a metaphor, dragster-like performance,
Yeah.
And you just got to remember, I mean, if you're over 40, and I don't think that's too old, I mean, you're a good-sized dude here, but just have fun. Like, anything you do, if you've never done this, is going to be a PR. So walk away without a tear or a dislocation.
Yeah, walk away whole.
Yeah, whole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then find a real one if you like it. Use this as something, do I like this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then if you do, find one they actually allow you to train for and tell you what the events are.
Mm-hmm.
So,
one more bit of mail here before we go to the news. This is from Chris. He just says, can you discuss your thoughts on the keto diet? Most of what I find is good, but I watched a Mayo Clinic dietitian recommending against it. And that's all he said. So, Mike, you were just catching up on some of this stuff, I think, recently in your travels. What's new with keto? Why might a health professional recommend against it? That sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, Lonnie, usually most health professionals recommend against it because they get confused about a ketogenic diet or what's called nutritional ketosis versus people who have a disease process or can become ketoacidotic, right? So ketones are potentially an issue if you do not have insulin output. So if you have any level of insulin output, that will check how high your ketones can get produced by the liver. And people tend to confuse the pathology of disease progress with healthy individuals. So if you look at the data from like the Charlie Foundation of even on younger kids who have epilepsy, who've used a ketogenic type diet, overall it's generally very safe. There isn't really any safety issues with it per se. So from that standpoint, I'd say there's probably not much to worry about. The bigger question is, does it fit your needs and your goals? You know, if you're working with your physician on some type of pathology, then you'd obviously have to talk to your physician about that or a health professional. If you're just doing it because you're a healthy person and you want to try it, it might be useful. But I always ask people, it's like, what is your goal? You know, like we said, if your goal is to do your first strongman event or CrossFit, then that's probably a horrible idea. If it's, you know, you don't like to exercise a lot and you want to try it to lose some weight, might be useful. So, yeah, I don't think it's necessarily dangerous per se, but again, that goes back to what is your goal and what are you trying to accomplish, and does it actually meet those specific needs?
Yeah, that's good advice. When I usually think about this, Chris, it's a lot of people in the muscle sports and strength sports, they overdo the protein and they actually don't go into ketosis. They get frustrated because they're like, I'm not eating any carbs. It's like, well, yeah, but you're eating 300 grams of protein, you know, and a lot of that's, you know, glucogenic. You're going to end up with, you know, enough blood sugar that you don't go into ketosis. So there's that. I agree with you 100%, right? This is not metabolic, you know, lack of insulin, ketoacidosis, and I think that's why a lot of dietitians recommend against it, but healthy people don't. You've got background levels of insulin, so you don't get that ketotic. There was a new study that just came out in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition looking at gender differences in ketosis, and there wasn't a lot. Some things seemed a little bit quote-unquote better in females, and I thought that was interesting. I'll try to pull that paper next week, but for now, if you want to go dig around about ketotic diets, American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, interesting stuff. It was looking at basically appetite and that sort of thing. Usually when people go on some diet where they cut out a lot of macros for whatever reason, you know, their calories get depressed and they become hungry. But, you know, one of the claims you hear from people that are proponents of the ketotic diet is, I don't feel like I'm totally jonesing for carbs once I get used to this. So I was sort of digging into that. I'll see if I can't find that. I don't know how directly applicable it would be. But, goal-oriented. Because, really low carbohydrate diets and performance, I'm just not a fan. I don't know what to say about that. I've just... Some people are really into it, and I think for body comp and stuff, it could be good, but like you said, depends on your goals.
Yeah, and like you said, Lonnie, make sure they measure their actually ketones. I use an Abbott Precision Extra meter. There's other ones you can use too, but nutritional ketosis, as Volek just, has defined, is probably about 0.5 millimolar or higher. You want to measure your actual blood ketones, not urine, especially when you're starting, and just see where you're at, and that gives you a pretty good marker.
Yep. Okay. I have one little bit of mail. News. I know, Mike, you've got one or two tidbits here, and we'll get to Dal. This is just sort of brief. This is from labroots.com and Carmen Leach.
Strength and muscle sport news.
I'm really impressed with her, by the way. She finds all the coolest stuff. Maybe we'll try to get her on the show. Why sleep is good for us. Now, this is an animal study, so don't roll your eyes, because sometimes this is just the kind of model we need. But it says every organism with a nervous system needs sleep. Now scientists believe they have identified one reason why it's so critical. They used a fish model to do this, but it says the researchers found that essential maintenance of DNA occurs in neuronal cells during sleep. The findings were reported in Nature Communications. They also indicate why sleep disruption has a significant impact on cognitive function and aging. So the idea here is, it says, as like other animals, as we go through life, we accumulate damage in our genes, right, our genomes, because of environmental factors, some, oxidative stress, or it could be radiation, that sort of thing, from the sun, etc. It says cells have ways of repairing DNA damage, but this work basically is showing that during times of wakefulness, chromosome dynamics are low. In other words, DNA damage continues. It builds up. Here's a quote. "It's like potholes in the road," said study leader and Professor Leor Applebaum. Roads accumulate wear and tear, especially during daytime rush hours, and it's most convenient and efficient to fix them at night when there is light traffic. So again, the idea is you get some of this DNA damage repair from sleeping. Just a final sort of conclusion here from them. It says, "This is possibly the reason why sleep has evolved and is so conserved in the animal kingdom." In other words, so many critters, including people, need sleep, right? I mean, a good portion of your life, let's say a third of your life is spent asleep, and this may be a big reason. So I'm not going to give a human lifter practical applications from a zebrafish study, but but it's worth noting, right? That how many times have we said, if you had to pick one thing to address that people sort of abuse, is sleep? Mike, I think you once said it's something about, like, I feel like I can get away with less, or I can kind of, cheat the system. I know I should be doing it. But yeah, I mean, if you don't want to biologically prematurely age and that sort of stuff, you got to really find a way to deal with it. It's just so disruptive, and in this case, damaging to your DNA, because you don't get that little bit of repair, every night. So, all right, Mike, you've got one or two things, I think.
Yeah, I got a couple things. I mean, real quick related to this one. This is from the JAMA network. Rob Wolf actually shared this with us. It's from May. It says, "Sleeping in doesn't mitigate metabolic changes linked to sleep deficit," which kind of goes against a little bit of some of the other data I've seen. I did a little thing for T Nation last year showing the study that sleeping in on the weekend actually appeared to help a little bit with people who were in a sleep deficit. But this one, they brought in 36 healthy people into a lab, aged 18 to 39. They split them into 3 groups. They had a sufficient sleep group that could sleep up to 9 hours a night for 9 nights. They did a sleep restriction group without weekend recovery sleep, which consisted of only 5 hours a night for 9 nights. And they did a sleep restriction group with weekend recovery sleep. So they had the 5 hours of sleep per weeknight, and then unrestricted sleep on the weekend, followed by another 2 weeknights of sleep restriction. And they did a whole bunch of measurements, and they did a bunch of other stuff. And what they found was that the sleep restriction across the board, this has been shown in other studies too, insulin sensitivity declined, which we've seen that in other people too. What was interesting is the amount of calories that they also consumed. So participants who were not allowed the weekend recovery sleep, who were in a sleep deficit, they ate in excess of around an extra 500 calories each night after dinner compared to their baseline intake. That's much higher than some of the other work I've seen. The participants that paradoxically were allowed weekend recovery sleep consumed as much as 641 calories more after dinner on weeknights relative to their baseline. So what was interesting is that the group that had kind of allowed the weekend recovery sleep actually even ate more calories. They said the average person in the sleep-restricted group each gained 3 pounds by the end of the study. And again, this isn't looking at body count, but just body weight. And again, that's a pretty severe sleep restriction there, too. And their theory is that allowing people to sleep in on the weekend, it kind of messes with their circadian rhythm more than if they didn't. One other thing I would say about this study is it's super fascinating, but I often wonder if they could sleep in a little bit more. Would that replacement of the sleep debt be better than how much they screwed with their circadian rhythm? I don't know. They didn't look at that in the study, but This is a recent study in current biology. So, yeah, pretty fascinating. So,
yeah, I've seen some
data to get your sleep.
Yep. I've seen stuff before, and I think we've all heard early to bed, early to rise, and you can't make up for it on the back end by sleeping in till 10 a.m., that kind of stuff. I don't know.
See, they had a study recently that said you can. I think Mike brought it up.
Yeah, that's the one I referenced. So
that changed my life.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm okay, I'm going to live.
By sleeping in?
Yeah, on just certain days.
Right.
That you can catch up a little bit, but...
Competing mechanisms, right? We're looking at what is a bigger mechanism, your circadian rhythm or the fact that you have a massive sleep debt.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
If you can sleep in and get an extra maybe crazy 6-7 hours on the weekend, my bias right now is I think I would do that, and maybe I can try to re-regulate my circadian rhythm versus not do that and try to keep my circadian rhythm. But man, you could argue either way.
That's what I'm thinking, too. I mean, you've got to think about absolute minutes and hours of sleep debt. If you're screwed after a week of, 4 and 5 hour nights, for God's sake, sleep in. I would. But I can understand that it's not always considered ideal, like getting yourself on a better schedule, to sleep at a decent time and all that kind of stuff. But
yeah. What I've been doing, so I went to a concert again, went to see Devin Townsend and Dance with the Dead this past week. So it was a later night, and I worked just to get up at the exact same time at 6:30 the next day, even though we didn't get back until late, and then go to bed as early as I could that following night, figuring I'll just kind of suffer through one day. I don't really have that much accumulated sleep debt, maybe a couple hours. And I'll kind of hedge my bet that the circadian rhythm is probably going to be a little bit more of an effect there. And that seems to work okay. But I agree with you guys. If you start having, 4, 5, 6 hours a night, Monday through Friday, now you've got such a massive sleep debt that's probably going to be a bigger factor.
Right. Yep.
No, I'm going to pretend you didn't say that.
Yeah, realities.
I'm just wondering about this for the fire department because we always lack on sleep.
Oh yeah.
Making calls through the night, and we work where I'm at. We work a 24-48 schedule where it's 24 hours on and 48 off.
Oh wow.
And there might be nights where you make 4 to 5 calls after midnight and then have to go home.
Yeah.
And so your sleep's all messed up. Is there something you can do, like with the circadian rhythm with melatonin, to help with re-regulating, even if you sleep in like the second day off?
Yeah, and I'll get the other guys' thoughts too, because what I do with people who are in similar positions as clients is, one, it's really hard. I mean, you're just kind of constantly switching your body back and forth, which you can look at the Nurses' Health study. There's a bunch of, I think, shift work now in California is considered a carcinogen, so it's obviously not the best. You're just working to try to mitigate effects. What I have people do is, once they switch back, so they're trying to get back to a normal rhythm, I find that light is a huge one. So try to get out 20, 30 minutes of sunlight kind of in your eyeballs, walking around, no sunglasses. And then darker at night, you can wear kind of even orange lens glasses, works pretty good for a lot of people. Sometimes with food, you can play around with timing. So try to get back to a normal schedule as much as you can. And I also tell people that your bed should be for sleeping, because you want your brain to associate the second I go to bed, I go to sleep. So try not to do reading and work and other things in your bed. And if you can't sleep for more than about 20 minutes, get up, do some light reading, have very low lights, and then try to go back to bed. Those are the ones I found that work. For melatonin, I start people with a small dose. I'll even start 0.5 milligrams.
Yep.
And then use it right as you want to be winding down to go to bed. So melatonin is more of a regulation of the circadian rhythm. It doesn't really do a lot to make people sleepy. It can in some people. But I worked with a client recently, and we're going through stuff, and she's like, well, yeah, I was working shift work, and I got up, and it was 12:30 after midnight, and I couldn't sleep, so I took a bunch of melatonin. And I'm like, what are you doing? You're trying to go to bed at 9 the next night because you get up at 4. You just kind of pushed your circadian rhythm super late. And she's like, well, I thought it was to help me sleep. I'm like, well, kind of, but that's a I use like L-theanine or something like that to try to get people to be more relaxed than melatonin at that point.
Yeah, I do a lot of the same stuff. I mean, reddish light or dark, or melatonin at the time of my day that I want my schedule to be. Like, if I want my schedule to go to sleep in the next hour, I take 1.5 milligrams of melatonin. So I literally bite a little 3 milligram melatonin pill in half. And they come in 5 milligrams and other doses too. But yeah, I don't do real heavy on that. That seems to work. I use double bag chamomile tea. That doesn't tend to interact with other meds and stuff. But to your point, Mike, yeah, a lot of this is not just melatonin as a sleep aid, but you're telling your body, this is what I want my bedtime to be, and that sort of thing. The other thing, to Dal's point, fitness is such a shield against poor sleep. Yeah. We talked about that last fall. We actually did some sleep deprivation stuff in my advanced ex-phys class, and I had a couple students. One of them stayed up for 36 hours, and I mean, we couldn't even, I'm sure his insulin function was off or whatnot, his sensitivity, but we couldn't even change like a glucose challenge. Like, he ate a high glycemic carbohydrate meal, and then we did like a 2-hour, glucose tolerance curve, and it really wasn't what we would have expected. And it's because he was a very fit cyclist and that kind of stuff. So and blood pressure didn't change that much. I think if you're very fit, your body just gets used to dealing with stressors. And of course, it's not a perfect fix. It's not like you can train your ass off and then barely sleep. But you can get away with several nights in a row if you're really fit. And I think much better than if you didn't train, so.
That makes sense.
Do you think that's more related to aerobic fitness, Lonnie? That's one of my theories, but I haven't seen any data supporting that. I've just noticed that more in clients, that if their VO2 max is higher or even just pretty good, like, they just appear to be a lot more robust and can handle all forms of stressors better. Obviously, strength training helps too, but I think from some of those like sleep deprivation and things of that, I think having a good aerobic base appears to help quite a bit.
Yeah, I haven't seen the comparison, so I really don't know. It might be, if it's like mitochondrial, if some of this is, cell energetics and stuff, maybe having the aerobic base is key. Yeah. Okay. All right, I'll tell you what, we're halfway into this, so let's go to break, and when we come back, we're going to check in with Dal about strength training, fitness in general, and firefighters. Hey listeners, this is Dr. Lonnie Lowry. If you've ever had anyone critique you on your protein intake as part of your weightlifting lifestyle, oh, you poor meathead, all that extra protein is going to rot your kidneys or weaken your bones or dehydrate you or give you gout or who knows what. There is a book available. You could simply Google CRC Press and Lowry. And what I've done is reach out to experts all over the world and create a book, a single compendium that you can hold up and say, this is why I consume extra protein. This can be very valuable when you're being quote-unquote educated by various professionals on the topic. There's an enormous amount of literature in this book on the safety, the effectiveness, how protein works in cells, the history of protein and weight trainers, much more. So again, please check out CRC Press and Protein and Lowry. You can just Google that, and I do, full disclosure, I do make a small single-digit royalty on the book, but that's not why I did it. I did it so we can all have something, our particular population, to both defend what we do and to inform our nutrition and our eating. Thanks. IronRadio is, of course, primarily a podcast. But over the years, there have been technical glitches calling for backup streaming and listeners who wanted the convenience of other sources of audio content. Toward this end, IronRadio is now simulcast and backed up on YouTube. If needed, please search Lawnman07 or IronRadio from within YouTube. There's not much video, but if you like to listen through YouTube on a Roku or other living room device, there you go.
Like your weekly fix of Iron Radio? In addition to being a popular institute on iTunes, we are also on email. Simply go to www.ironradio.org and sign up for the voluntary email. You'll get a once per week email, no more. That's little more than the show notes and a link to the audio. So go for it.
We're back. We're going to talk to Dal about strength training and being firefighter EMT type stuff. Basically, I just want to get general thoughts. I mean, first off, I see a lot of firefighter stuff out there. I'm not going to give my opinion yet, but I mean, there's a lot. For a while, there was CrossFit, really heavy endurance training for firefighters, things like that. I just want to get your general ideas on where you think firefighters should be headed compared to what they are, or are they doing things right?
Well, there's such a mix. It's funny you guys talked about strongman at the beginning, because that's kind of how it, you walk in the morning, it's what strongman events am I doing today?
Yeah.
Because nothing we do is light. Nothing we move is light. No patients we move are light because they're dead weight. So that's where I think a lot of people get messed up is, especially with CrossFit, it's so Metcon based, which is good for fires unless you're too weak to move everything around. Then the endurance just kind of falls off because you're having to work so much harder. And I think that if you could build a perfect program for everybody, it's heavy in strength in your core movements and maybe some awkward movements thrown in for assistance work. And then on your shift days, because you're not able to lift like that anyway, you could do some light stuff. But doing some kind of cardio, that way you're recovering from your workouts on your days off. You're not taxing your system in case you have to go do something. You're also building up your aerobic base for when you have to work.
And that's one thing I hear from people all the time. And yes, there are firefighters that have this benefit, but they're like, "Oh, you're a firefighter. You just get to train all day and watch TV." And a lot of the guys I work with, Dal, you're included, it's like, no, man, if I go in and train hard, I can't. Basically, you can't train hard because what if that alarm goes off?
Yeah.
If Dal just finished a set at 800, the alarm goes off. I mean, it's not gonna happen. But
well, it's like the station I'm at. We average 14 to 18 calls a shift in a 24-hour shift.
Oh, wow.
So if that tells you, and a 2-unit house, so we might both be going out, it fluctuates either way, more or less calls. But it's impossible to get a workout in there and not risk injury or just a crap workout. Like, it's just, when it comes to time management, not worth it. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because you never know when that alarm's going to happen. And it's usually happening in the next 30 minutes to an hour.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I agree. So, I mean, you're basically saying, of course you need just static strength. I mean, if you have a firefighter that's just weak, of course they're just going to need to bring basic level strength up. Yes. But other than that, I mean, it makes sense to me, like loaded carries, dragging things. I mean, it's gonna have a lot of transfer.
Well, and the other part is it's like we do everything with a weight vest on. Because our air pack is 45 pounds. Plus your gear, plus whatever you carry in your gear, it's upwards to 80 to 100 pounds. Trying to move properly is impossible, especially with that much weight. And then you're trying to drag something or work overhead when you have basically a 45-pound backpack on. And muscular size and strength just helps move that around and make it a non-factor. Whereas if like with if you just focus on the endurance side of it, your body does not know how to have that pillar strength to work with that and make it a non-factor.
Well, I mean, another thing I've touched on with firefighters is, because I've had numerous ones stop in, I still have numerous that train with me. I mean, there's that whole what if. I mean, especially in today's world, what if you walk into a building and there's me laying there at 250 now? Can you move me? Yeah, exactly. I'm light. Can you move me? Yeah. If not, you better get stronger, man, because there's a lot of people that are just big, and they're counting on you. So, I mean, there has to be some kind of level strength there, and that's like, I know several women that are in it, and that's their big push. Like, I need to be stronger. I got to carry this freaking hose, you know, and things like that. So, I don't know. There's a lot of people out there pushing strength training towards fire and rescue and stuff like that. I mean, what do you feel? I mean, is there a program you'd point somebody to? Just a basic program. I mean, you see, Wenning's doing the conjugate for frickin' firefighters and everything else.
No, you know, I would say Windlers because it works off of a 90%. So you're never getting up. You should be, you know, killing weights in the gym, so you're not taxing your system. But at the same time, like the way you've run things in the past, where it's kind of conjugate, kind of percentage.
Yeah.
Where it's you got some playroom. You got a day where you got backup plan.
Yeah.
If those percentages aren't there, maybe you're working to a max 5 at like an RPE of 8.
Yeah.
Where it's like you got a few left in the tank, you're still taxing your system, but the weights go out the window because you had a night where you were up all night.
Yeah.
You're out training. Like your system's just your body's just not ready for it. But you have to train because you have 2 days off, then you're back to work.
Yeah. Endurance based wise or strength endurance. I mean, what do you feel is the most important? I mean, is it more of a? I mean, we can make guesses from the outside, but you're living it. Is it more of a like strongman type where it's hard rest, or is there a big need for just all out like moderate endurance within your daily work?
Both.
That's
the hard part because you know we might get a high rise fire where we have to take equipment up 18 flights of stairs before we even start working.
Gotcha.
And if you just have that strongman base where you're big and strong, you're able to recover quick, but you can't move for 30 minutes before you have to work.
Yeah.
Then it kind of goes out the window. When it comes to actually fighting fire, more importantly is the quick, because it's a lot of work in a short amount of time, and then you need to recover a little bit.
Yeah.
And we always talk about rescue pace is something you think all out, but it's not. You need to understand how to use your energy wisely. It's no running. You move with a purpose, but it's not all out. And then everything outside of the actual fire is very quick. Once you get inside, everything slows down because you have to conserve your air, but you're working hard, and you have to. You don't want to pass. Fires are victims. So if you just go,
yeah,
you end up running out of air, and you didn't do the job you needed to. And that's the big thing is air management, and that's where that kind of cardio base are able to recover quick comes in.
Yeah, somebody's huffing and puffing too much because they're out of shape.
Yes.
They're burning through their air faster.
Yep.
Yeah, it makes total sense. I mean, so what do you suggest? I mean, for that, just like drag a sled, weighted vest walks, hill walks, all the above?
I think probably prowler pushes and heavy sled walks, and then probably dropping off the weight and doing like a few sprints with it. Mm-hmm. Kind of taxing your body to be tired and then doing something quick to kind of, okay, I need to know how to move this weight for a extended amount of time, like under time or under a distance, without taxing myself too bad to sprint, if that makes sense.
No, it makes total sense. I mean, and that comes back to a lot of what I do as far as, well, not with firefighters, but just in general, believe in. Like the whole CrossFit thing came around, it was, of course it would work to a point with a firefighter or anybody else. The problem I've had with it is skilled work against time.
Yep.
Whereas we can potentially get the same response from the body doing unskilled work against time and drastically decrease our injury rate.
Yes.
So, I mean, I think that's where a lot of people mess up. And like you're saying, the prowler and stuff like that. I mean, basically, it's not zero. Of course, nothing is a zero injury rate. But, I mean, it's as close as you can get. If you hurt yourself pushing a prowler, you got issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless you're Justin. One of my clients blew his shoulder pushing a prowler. But it's definitely not normal. Would you say, I don't know, let's try and put numbers on things. If you were in charge, would there be a baseline of strength for like main moves for a man or woman?
Yeah, and that's where it's hard. It shouldn't be man or woman. It should be firefighter.
Well, of course it should.
It should be, but in a perfect world, it's not that way.
Yeah.
And because no matter who it is, if I'm stuck, I want whoever's coming to be the strongest person possible.
Yeah.
But that's neither here nor there. But if I had to put base numbers, it would probably be a 400-pound squat to begin with.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Because everything you do is with your lower body and your core. And, lifting in general and your back strength. That's in a perfect world.
Yeah.
I think if you couldn't go that route, maybe a double body weight, because you're able to work with all that equipment on, plus whatever you need to do that's strenuous would probably be a more accurate statement. And then probably a double body weight deadlift and maybe 1 to 1 1/4 bench, because that's just not important. Overhead press would be way more important because you do so much overhead. And injury prevention for everything you do overhead.
Yeah.
Because working with straps on your shoulder trying to pull ceiling, bench doesn't really come into play.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of shoulder injuries, right? Shoulder injuries, back injuries, knees.
Yeah.
I mean, the knees have to take a beating.
Yes. So I got hurt, but whenever I got hurt, I went and had to meet with our risk management individual, who we found out, like through talking to her, that 70% of the injuries on the fire department were patient lifting related.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where, our knees take a beating. It's more our backs.
Yeah.
From constantly, you wake up at 2 a.m. and you got to go lift. I hurt my back when I first came on. I had 2 years on. We had to lift a woman who was 616 pounds that was stuck between the wall of her bathroom, the toilet, and the bathtub, and I had to pick her up and turn her to get her going out of the bathroom. At 2 a.m, there's nowhere to prepare for that kind of a movement.
No, I mean, that's like us. We'll wake up 3 hours early.
But, yeah. And so, I would say knees take a beating with backs more importantly, and then wearing an air pack on it, and then doing everything bent over, pulling hose, pulling ceiling, being down on your knees, moving, trying to drag, a hose or individuals through something, or moving chairs around that our hose gets stuck in. Just, that's why I say it's kind of like, what strongman events are we doing today?
Yeah.
And then you think all that, and that's where the 2 days off, you can't let your workouts just destroy you to where you can't do those things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a hard thing to manage.
Yeah. Now, fire, correct me if I'm wrong, basically each department is independent from the other ones, right? So, what you guys do to prepare is different from what other people do.
Yeah.
Like city to city.
Yeah, there's a lot of cross-training, though.
Gotcha.
Best practices are put out kind of thing, or there's a lot of conferences that go on and they talk about new practices, but still each department, whether they take it or leave it or think it's the best thing.
The only reason I get at that is because, I mean, from being in what I do for so long across the country, is I've seen a huge variance from department to department about how in shape they are. Locally here, they're horrible. But I go down the road 30 minutes and they're not. So
that's where we, with my department, and I could go on for days about the politics of this and how it's messed up, but if we get hurt while working out at the station, we are not covered because it was not attached to an alarm.
Gotcha.
And so they'll give us 60 days off. If it's not fixed that day, that's 60 days. You got to use all your sick leave or vacation until you're healthy.
Gotcha.
And then if we're out training, same thing. If it's not attached to alarm, we're not covered.
Really? Even though you're on the job?
Even though we're on the job.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, because it wasn't attached to an alarm. It's like they want you to be very proficient, but they don't want to have to pay for the risk of injury.
Yeah, it's like you need to train really hard so you don't get hurt on the job, but we're not covering you during your training. Yes. That's interesting.
Wow.
Unless we have to go through like a long process to get it all covered, but if you just wanted to go out back at the station and pull some line to get it all figured out, and you roll your ankle or break something stepping off, that's not covered. So I can go into the politics of it, but it's messed up.
Yeah. All right. Basically, going back to your injury, a lot of what happened to you, and basically you were, having a large amount of muscle tissue kind of saved your ass in ways, correct? Yes. And we've seen this, like Lonnie said, we hear this all the time. Lonnie was talking about the guy who got in a wreck and like his steering wheel broke off, but he walked away fine. And things like that. So, that's another way, and we've seen it time and time again. You're finally getting in youth sports where they're realizing that basic strength training lowers injuries. It doesn't raise them.
Yes.
Is there any way, or do you feel there should be a nationwide governing body? Like, you guys need this. Would that help? Or is it possible?
Oh, what exactly do you mean?
Over fire. Like, you guys need to do this to get in shape. Here's your baseline. Kind of like the Army.
I wish.
Army now has their fitness.
100%. We have a fitness test that we have to take when we first get on, which is the CPAT, which is the Candidate Physical and Aptitude Test.
Mm-hmm.
But it's nowhere near how hard it should be.
Gotcha.
Basically, they had to make it easier to fit all individuals into the ability to do it, which doesn't apply to actual strength and endurance you need for the fire department or any calls. But it's just the baseline. But then there's no testing after that.
Okay,
some departments have it, but it's usually like a run, which has nothing to do with strength or firefighting in general, or staying healthy and being stronger. I think the way that the Army's going is probably, or the military's going, is the best route.
Yeah, a lot of people bitched about that, but I think it's a damn good step in the right direction.
Yeah. And this reminded me, so they have, the military just approved the swim instead of a run.
Mm-hmm.
I think, like, if you wanted to talk about long distance endurance for firefighting or like military, I think that would be the best route to go for air management and endurance, because it's no load. Obviously, the benefits no loading on your body, and you just build endurance without any kind of stress. And so I realized this whenever I had tried out for the rescue team this last January, which was part of it was a swim test, how much my endurance built up without giving up any strength.
Gotcha.
And how to manage, because swimming, it's all air management.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very, very smart step for both. If they could do that for the fire department, probably police department, any kind of public service, treat it like the military.
Yeah, and I don't understand why. Like, we see it. We see it here. The police and fire are just grossly out of shape. They're in shape when they get hired.
Yeah.
Yes.
And now they're in.
Yep.
And there's no baseline. I'm sorry, bro. Just as a citizen, it's like, I shouldn't be in. The average citizen walking around shouldn't be in better shape than you. We're paying you to save our asses. Yep. That's literally your job.
You guys
take some pride.
Yep. So. My buddy Frank, he is a firefighter EMT, and he's always bitching. He's like, some of the guys I work alongside, he's like, I'm afraid I'm going to have to, carry their fat asses out of the building, in addition to the victims that need my help, because they're just so out of shape and that kind of stuff, but.
Yeah. So I'm lucky to be on a department that the young guys are kind of, the mentality's changing to be. We have a lot of people that are in very good shape. It hadn't always been that way. It made me think of a story with a captain who's now retired, but whoever was on the back end of his fire engine would have to come around and put his air pack on for him because he was too fat to reach around and actually put the air pack on.
Wow.
And so, like, you're a liability at that point.
Liability, yeah.
Yeah. For, like, I might get hurt having to pull you out, and you're definitely getting hurt if anything happens. And then I got to try and explain that to your family that you were just too fat to do the job.
Yeah.
Which is not what I'd say, but that's what you're thinking in the back of your head.
Yeah. You have to put the right words together. And that's, again, off topic a little bit, but I guess we can mix military and fire together. That's another good thing about the new military test is it's basically if you want to be an active commander, you now just don't get to hang on because you're rank. You have to prove it. They're making you, okay, you got a new job. You can't cut the mustard, bro. You're pushing papers. And I mean, they could do something like that. I mean, there's logistical jobs within the fire department. Okay, you're answering the phone.
Well, so that's what I did when I got hurt. I got turned into a secretary for 7 months. Which
and
is
if
the
you,
worst,
well, yeah, but I mean,
ever.
it gives what it do. It pushed your ass to get healed.
Yeah.
If somebody doesn't want to be pushing papers, get your ass in shape. If you want to be on the job, do something about it.
Phil, it's not that different from something like continuing education. Like, I have to get 75 hours of CEUs to maintain my nutrition license.
Yeah.
In a physical setting like this, it's not that different. It's continuing, like, development, and ability. You're just maintaining so you don't, with continuing ed, so you don't atrophy mentally. This is so you don't atrophy physically. Phil, Dal was talking about, like, in the water and stuff like that. I can tell you, when my brother and I and some of my buddies, this was long after we started lifting, but that's how we lifeguarded. We muscled people out of the water. We weren't especially buoyant compared to some of these chubby lifeguards that we'd compete for jobs against and stuff, but we'd take a deep breath and we would pluck people from the bottom of the freaking lake and muscle them out, and it makes me wonder about how much of this is simply being stronger because everything you do is so submaximal, versus some specialized training. I mean, there's that whole, tactical strength and conditioning, the TSAC stuff, certifications and all that kind of stuff, and it does make me wonder how much of this is baseline fitness and muscular strength versus something that's more skill specific or special ways to train, I guess.
Yeah, I mean I see this crap all the time. I mean, I had to go take had to up my CPR and first aid, and I was like, leaving there, I'm like, I wouldn't want any of these people saving me. I'd be screwed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing, but no.
Yeah, and we need it to be a cultural shift, and like, if there's anything, it'd be hard to do, but like the citizens should at the same time hold them reliable too.
Yeah.
Like when you see somebody that's out of shape, you don't have to belittle them, but it'd be nice if you don't have to go to that person. Call in, downtown and be like, hey, why isn't there a program set up? Because it's probably it'd be a shit show to start, and probably a lot of feelings would get hurt. But it's the only way anything's going to change is if the citizens decide to change it, because they're the ones paying the taxes.
Oh yeah.
And you know what I mean? What they want the money allocated for, because it all comes down to money and taxes.
Well, and I mean that comes back to this is going to open a whole new can of worms, but the 600-pound lady.
Yeah.
Hey, it normally takes us 2 people to get somebody out of a room. It took 6. Just because of you, we spent this much more money. Because you put yourself in a position. So
that's like the beds in ambulances. I've heard, some communities are retooling to 1,000-pound gurneys, kind of, because the victims are too huge, kind of thing. But,
so
it's pretty amazing. I didn't realize how many severely obese people, how big of a problem it was, I guess to say. And so I got on the fire department, and you start making those calls because these are individuals you don't see out around because they can't get out around.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it's pretty staggering to see that. And then we're asked to move in, which is no problem. I enjoy helping people. It doesn't matter who you are. It's just you run the risk of injury at that point.
Yeah.
Because there's they're never in an easy place to get to, or there's trying to fit a very heavily person through a door. when you got 6 people trying to do it, well, you can't. It's got to be 2 now, 1 on each end. And we're going up and down stairs with them. Because we have what's called a mega mover, which is a giant tarp that's 1,200 pounds rated, and that's where carries and stuff like that come advantage. But it makes it just injuries is so high, and that's why strength, like what Phil was saying, having that base strength, it prevents the injuries. They're not preventable, but it helps mitigate them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I go in about my injury and how the size helped. Basically, like Phil was saying, if I wasn't as strong as I was to start, I probably would be paralyzed or close to. I ended up breaking 2 vertebrae in my neck and herniating my C5, C6, and my C6, C7.
Oh.
And getting radiculopathy down my right arm and pec, which caused basically I lost function to my right pec, my tricep, my forearm, and my lat, which is slowly coming back. It's almost been a year now. But I was told that if I had it was kind of a like 2 shifts in a row. I had a beam of a ceiling come in on me and on the top of my head when we were pulling ceiling, which isn't uncommon. Happens almost every fire, but I was looking in the wrong direction, looking up, and it caught me kind of on the back of the head and pulled my neck over. And so I had a severely sore neck going into the next shift. And I was pulling a guy, we were doing rescue team training, was pulling him into the boat, and it was almost like a $1 million baby wound, where I had his weight on top of me when we fell into the boat, and my neck hit on basically the other side, and it pulled my neck, chin to sternum with his weight on top of me. And then that's where like my whole arm went numb, my hand went numb, couldn't really use it. But talking to the doctors, after getting MRIs and everything, they told me that if my neck wasn't as big and as strong as it was, that those breaks would have been a lot worse, herniations would have been a lot worse. And like the C3, C4 is what controls your diaphragm. And so if I would have herniated a couple more up, it would have caused that. So that's where it's, like you said, Phil, having that base strength just helps so much, because that's nothing that's uncommon. It was small injuries that have happened before. It was just kind of freak accidents that happened twice in a row.
Yeah.
And, thank God I had done all the work to be as strong as I was, or else the story might be a lot different.
Oh, yeah. People don't realize how much muscle tissue, just soft tissue, bulletproofs you from average things.
Yeah, definitely.
So, but, that's like when Windler wrecked his bike. They're like, you should be dead. But just because he's huge, he walked away all fucked up, but he's walking. So, but, all right. Well, I think we'll call it there. And
I appreciate it.
Like I said, we'll have you on. We talked in the break about a future episode, so we'll do that. So everybody have a good weekend.
Sounds good.
Cool. See you guys.
See ya.
Later.
See you guys.
Hey listeners, have you seen the store at IronRadio.org? There are 3 halls in the store. One for Phil, one for Fortress, and one for myself, Dr. Lowry. And they're thematic. So you can go into our Halls of Iron store and choose based on your goal. If you need something to learn or read or something nutritional, you can look in my store, Lonnie's store. If you want something about injury prevention or competition, then take a look at Phil's Hall of Iron. And if you want something about motivation or daily training, Fortress's Hall has what you're looking for. There are some fun, heroic descriptors as you browse through the stores. We try to make it a little more fun than the average boring online store. And whether you're a novice lifter or someone more experienced, you can take heart that you're not wasting your time. The things that we put in each Hall of Iron are actually based on our own recommendations. Protein powders that we know to be good, knee sleeves, wraps of some kind, things that Fortress uses in his own training. The stuff you see, is good. This way you don't waste time. So check out the Iron Radio store at ironradio.org. And let us know what you think on the forums, and certainly you can request products, and we will screen them before they go in. So, thanks for listening. Iron Radio is accepting donations. If you like what we do, the professors, the scientists, the bodybuilding show promoters, the athletes themselves in powerlifting and bodybuilding, please consider making a donation or maybe buying something from the ironradio.org store. We also are accepting supporting members. So for $4 a month, which is frankly less than the bank sneaks out of your account in fees, you can step up and support a form of sort of public radio for the bodybuilding and powerlifting and strength community. The Iron Radio podcast and all of the audio on ironradio.org is for informational purposes only. If you're interested in starting a diet or exercise program, it's important to check with your physician. Also seek the help of registered dietitians, athletic trainers, and qualified exercise physiologists in order to make the progress that you need.